All right, everyone, we're back. Welcome to another episode of the Zen Meathead podcast with my lovely co-host, right? Zen Meathead and me. What did we decide I was?
Awesome.
Wait. Serendipity. That's the name.
Ah, yes.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it, kids. Serendipity.
There's going to be more to that story, but
yeah,
we can talk about that later.
We've kind of been teasing at it for a while. Yeah. So today we have another amazing results episode. We'll call it Fat to Fit number 2. So
congratulations.
I know it's a little humbling and a little embarrassing and kind of awesome all at the same time. So we have our wonderful friend Rory Liebhart.
Hello.
Welcome, buddy.
Thank you.
And Rory's recently gone through an amazing transformation that we've been a part of.
Fucking stunning transformation.
So
Yeah. 8.5 years in the making.
So, with a little bit of background, you and Chris went to high school together. Sorry, the Zen Meathead, whatever your name is.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay. You two went to high school together and were friends and reconnected kind of later, more recently, and some things have moved around. So
yeah, I'd say we're longtime / new friends, kind of.
Yeah.
So for those listening, we are in Washington. Chris and I went to school in a town called Woodinville, Washington, and we had a lot of the similar, I would say, mutual friends, but I wouldn't say we necessarily spent a lot of time with you like back in the day. But
in passing, hey, what's up, man?
But yeah, I'd say in the last year, after we'd been threatening to get together for ages, we finally did, and it's just like, wow, it's like I've known this guy for 20 years, which I kind of did, but we immediately reconnected, like in a super easy way. It was amazing.
I fucking loved it.
And then I got to meet Sarah, who I'd seen, through pictures of you for ages. And I'm like, this person's a force. Can't wait to meet her. And yeah, that's true. She's a force.
Turns out.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue with.
So you, post high school, we obviously kind of like lost touch.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the lines, I think it was actually when John Barnes started getting in shape.
Yes.
I started seeing you two together at Team Fire and Fitness.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Was it called Team Fire and Fitness then as well?
Yeah. Fire Fitness and Conditioning is like the true name. Ryan Steffen is the coach. His handle is Team Fire Fitness for his like social platforms. But yeah, Fire Fitness and Conditioning was, I guess that was like, if we want to put a start of the journey, so to speak, that was when I started training and actually like taking, I would say, fitness kind of seriously back in the day. But there's been, there's a long lead up to that and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
What got you? Because that's a huge hurdle for a lot of people is just making the decision to commit.
Yeah. So, I guess a little bit about me is, I spent much of my life, not as a happy person really, so.
Amen.
Yeah. I'm not unique by any stretch. No. And I'll preface that this whole conversation, I'm not unique in any way, but like, I think some ways, people find their way into like making a change for themselves in different ways. So, the way I like to put it with people is, as far as mental health and kind of happiness goes, like if there was a barometer here where above this line, you were happy, or below this line, you were not. I was kind of just on the line or just below for like my whole life.
Yep.
And in a lot of ways I feel fortunate for that because I have family members and, a lot of people around me that have not been so fortunate. But nevertheless, I lived a lot of my life in darkness, in terms of just, keeping inward to myself, not letting others in, not seeking help from others,
protecting yourself.
Yeah. From what though? That's such another conversation. It's like, what are you afraid of?
Oh, I have so much. And
I've just learned so much in the last, 10 years in particular. But yeah, I got to the point where I was kind of at a really low point, back in 2015. And I just remember, our friend John, who was really, he had done a lot in terms of finding fitness and making that part of his lifestyle. And I just remember contacting him one time in my car, and it was a rainy night, and I was just like, man, I don't want to live this way. Because at that point in time, I was 310 pounds. I'm 6'1". That's an unhealthy weight to be carrying. And, the lead up to that was, I would say I pretty much mortgaged away my 20s and 30s to work. I would say that, and that's kind of an excuse.
It's a beautiful way of saying it, though.
You did it to the bar.
and it was like my priority, but I didn't really have a life around that was totally healthy to support that. So, long and short of it is over the course of 10 years, I gained 100 pounds.
Good Lord.
Gradually. And, I always got these comments, oh, you carry it well, or, what.
Yeah.
I was always a pretty athletic person, not gifted, but just reasonably athletic. So, it was kind of one of those things where I wasn't like setting off people's alarm bells and my markers like blood pressure and cholesterol, all those things. And I was still pretty young at that time, weren't like out of whack. So it was like, I guess I just am a fat person, and like, but I was never happy about that. I had pretty low self-esteem and things like that. But I got to the point where I really kind of hit that rock bottom proverbially. And I just was like, I got to change something. And so John was just somebody that had been in my life. And I just said, dude, I got to figure out what it is you've done, because John was never like a overly unhealthy or, out of shape person, but he got ripped.
The pictures I saw of him,
super ripped.
Holy
and I'm
shit.
like, well, don't take this the wrong way, John. But I was like,
I want to be
if
you,
he
man.
can do that, I think I can probably try to do that too. You know? And he was super nice, and he connected me with Coach Ryan Steffen, which we'll talk about. This dude's a incredible,
Superstar.
So rad.
superstar. But so I found for myself, and one of the things I think everybody needs to find out for themselves is, what does it take for you to make changes? So for me, what I found was that physical change, activity, exercise, training, that is what helped me get my mental health in shape. Whereas a lot of people, it's the opposite. They're like, I got to get my mind right before I can start to do physical stuff. But as soon as I figured that out, I was like, okay, now I can address the mental stuff, because I'm starting to, get the benefits of training and momentum. Yeah, exactly right. And that's exactly what it was. And so, it seems like, maybe in the last 9 or 10 months since we've been kind of working together, and you've been an advocate and a coach and sort of a support for me, like that's where I've really, taken it kind of to the next level. But all the spade work has been done for like 8+ years, and it's been awesome, so super grateful, and just, I can honestly say, like, I'm happier than I've ever been in my life, and, healthier. I've always been a very late bloomer in a lot of things. And so I'm this guy at 45 that's, I wake up every day and I'm the fittest I've ever been in my life, where I have a lot of friends that were athletes, like in college and stuff. And, they were at a different level, but, I feel like, well, I'm kind of glad I'm a late bloomer, because every day I can keep getting stronger, fitter, happier, and that's what we're here on this earth to do, is just be as happy as you can and sort of try to bring joy to others too. So, it's been cool.
Well, and I think you hit on it there too. And I think so many people don't recognize that, I think fitness often gets demonized as being, oh, you're self-absorbed, you're this or you're that. But then just like you described, when you start being more active or being more intentional with your eating, all of a sudden, like, you keep hearing from people where it's like, hey, my signs of depression are like decreasing. My quality of life is improving. Turns out the physical form is the least interesting part of all of it.
That's
at least
really,
for me.
Really interesting perspective. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Let's be honest though. For me, there is certainly a lot of self-absorption in what I'd like to think is a pretty healthy way. At least I try to give as much out to the world as I get from the world that way. But you have to have a level of, I guess, dedication, priorities, like
boundaries.
To do that. Boundaries. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. And it's what brings me joy, like the things I do, physical activity, physical exertion is what I'm about. Maybe even a healthy dose of punishment is what I crave in life, I guess, like
interesting.
Yeah. A little masochism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just have a wonderful community of people, around me that are all about the same things, and I love that. And it's like, you can, like I said, I get so much from the people around me, and then I try to give out the good energy to help other people. And, so, I think, I think I'm at a great place relative to myself, maybe the best place relative to myself ever, but there's so many impressive people out there. I train with them every single day, and I'm around them. There's just amazing people out there that are doing incredible stuff, just objectively.
So Team Fire and Fitness, I've now been to 2 gyms that have that level. Like that community thing is huge.
Oh, so big.
Huge.
Yeah. I'm so glad you both have become part of that.
Oh, it's
Seriously.
it's about to get a little more serious. We can talk about that later.
Yeah. You all crush it when you're there, man. Seriously.
Well, so pre-finding that,
Yeah.
were you still a fairly like physical person, or were you just like, I sit down at the desk, I work all day, like I don't have time for that shit?
Yeah, it was not making the time for it because I grew up. I played sports. Like I really love football. Like it's a lovely game. I love everything about it, and I was pretty decent at it actually. But I stopped playing football back in the junior year of my high school time for the dumbest of reasons. And like I'll just make a little side comment to say, kids, listen to your parents from time to time, because I had this ridiculous mentality.
I love that you think kids are listening to this.
Yeah. Parents, tell your
Hopefully
kids to listen to this.
Right?
I've done a lot of stuff that I like on balance would regret. I made a lot of bad decisions, all that stuff. But like the one thing in life that I truly regret was not playing football as long as I could, because I had this ridiculous mentality, because I used to like to skateboard, snowboard, wakeboard, into the whole extreme sports thing when I was in high school. And then I had it in my mind that you couldn't do those things and then play football and be a jock. So I was like so anti wanting to be put in a jock bucket that I was just like, I'm just going to quit football and, F these guys. And whatever.
Oh, wow. It was literally just an alternative thing.
Dumbest thing ever. And then my parents were like, you're really going to regret that. You love football. It's, you could actually continue to play that probably past high school if you really put in work and stuff. Oh, fuck, you don't know shit. Whoa. I'm going to be a pro snowboarder. No, not. So long the story short of it is like, that would be the only thing I regret in life, is not continuing to do that. But all of that to say, grew up playing sports and all that stuff. But yeah, when I got into the professional world, it is like a lot of, I work in, the finance and accounting world, and especially as a junior person in those world, you're putting in the hours, and you guys know it from big tech.
Oh yeah.
And so, but I didn't have any sort of outlets to offset the stress and, cortisol and all the science behind all that stuff to otherwise make my life healthy. So I just would go to work 10 to 12 hours a day. I'd be working late, so then I'd go like get pizza or something like that. And I drank a lot, because coping with stress, would get really bad sleep because I'm drinking, all of these things. And it's like over 10 years that just accumulates.
Yep.
What's the opposite of habit stacking? Bad habit stacking?
I mean, I guess.
Just not giving a F, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Don't give a fuck.
But it was almost like I wasn't realizing it was happening until it was there. Like I'd look down on the scale and be like, how did I gain like 25 pounds over the last 6 months? Well, if you do the math, you can gain I gain 100 pounds over 10 years. So if you gain a pound a month, that's not eating at a crazy surplus of calories, but it's enough to,
Yeah. It's consistency.
Consistently, like gain. And it's like, I look down again, fast forward to 2015. I'm like, how did I become 310 pounds? Well, I can tell you how. Not enough exercise, not enough, healthy habits, and bad sleep, and little movement, and lots of drinking, and all this. And it's just like, I was so unhappy. And so, but I was also like undiagnosed or untreated depression, again, and part of my story too, maybe that feeds into that is, I lost my best friend in 2012 to, call it a cardiac event, but most likely due to overconsumption of drugs and alcohol. Nobody really knows. It happened in Thailand. Lost my brother to a heroin overdose in 2014. And, so I have some stuff in my life that was kind of traumatic. And so, I'm a person that, seeks comfort in food, like some people do with drugs and alcohol. My thing tends to be food. And so that's always been a battle. So, all of these things feed into like, well, okay, what do you want to do about that now? So first things first, get in. I remember the first day I did training with Ryan, Coach Ryan. It was literally like I walk in there very out of shape, and I'm with like, I just look around, again, it's the same thing it is today, but it's like you look around fire fitness and conditioning, you've got people of all ages, ethnicities, walks of life,
Abilities.
Professional athletes,
Yeah.
People like me today, which are just like, washed up old guys trying to recapture some glory of their, youth or whatever. But and like intimidating people, like people are really impressive.
Fit as fuck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I remember like Ryan would put me through these like very basic like mobility things. I remember like, can you squat with a wooden dowel over your head? Can you balance on, one leg or something? It's just basic stuff. I'm like, man, I got a long way to go here. But, his regimen is the same today as it was then. He runs kind of what he calls semi-private group sessions, which even if these groups can be, a couple dozen people in times, you still feel like you're getting personal training.
100%.
I don't know how he does it. It's actually magic how he will tailor a program to hit everybody's specific needs. Like some days I'll be training for, a half marathon versus like you've got professional basketball players in there and you have other collegiate athletes that have other objectives, yet he's dialing up a program that all of us can do together. You've been there,
Yeah.
and
It's an all-you-can-eat buffet.
it is.
All-you-can-lift buffet.
It is. And I mean, I've been doing it for 8 years and I've never walked away from a single session saying, oh, that was pretty easy.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I get my ass kicked 3 to 4 times a week, every week. But the point is like over time, he worked me in a way that wasn't overbearing or intimidating or like dejecting. It was like, you can do this.
Yep.
And so, the next thing you have, within like 3 months, 4 months, I had gone from like 311 down to like 270. Cause once you even do the most minimal changes in your life,
huge impact.
you can see huge results, but then the gains start to become more and more, kind of challenging to get to, however you want to put that.
Yeah.
And
It's harder to see results.
yeah. And if you don't have the right kind of guidance to push you through that, there's so much information out there. And if you go down these rabbit holes with different protocols and other stuff, you just don't know. And some,
It's easy to get
for some of the
discouraged.
stuff we've done together, I know you, I trust you, you've done the work. Both
You
of
fool.
And so it's like, so you can kind of say, okay, like I can trust in the process, and that it's meaningful. But, so yeah, I just, I've personally found, again, coming back to the theme of like, every person's different, everybody needs to find their own why. Well, for me, the why was I don't like being unhappy. So how do I want to change that? Well, if I start to move, I start to have the motivation to address like the mental health stuff. I started going to therapy, started getting on antidepressants and started covering off on that, and then started to evolve that stuff even further to where, I'm not doing any of that anymore because I don't need it, and so that's a very
You came
good
off
place
of
to be.
SSRIs completely.
I did. Yeah.
Dude,
3 years ago. And there's another story behind that. I definitely believe strongly, again, each person's different, but I've found psychedelic compounds to be hugely beneficial to me. So I take mushrooms 4 times a week. I've had other, psychedelic experiences that are deeply impactful. And, by doing those things coupled with all the other stuff in my life, I'm off of that kind of medication completely.
Magic.
Now, are you microdosing 4 times a week?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was like,
We know a lot of people.
You talking to God 4 times a week, friend?
Right. Damn. Damn.
Yeah, no, I definitely, but at the same time, I do think it's also important, at least for me, not everybody per se, but like to have those really immersive experiences. Like, those can be really, you can dig deep, and like, I don't know, but it's funny because like, I could like fast forward everybody to what you come to grips with, which is to say, at the end of the day, all that matters in life is love. So,
It's funny how absolutely everyone I know that has explored psychedelics comes to that exact same.
Exactly. It's just like, if you peel it back, my religion is the golden rule: do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But you have to realize that stuff in your own way. And some people have different flavors to it, but for me, that's what it is about. And so, all of this work and things like that, got started because I was able to sort of get a movement oriented routine, strength training, all that stuff. But yeah, it's evolved way past that now. It's like my whole number one priority in my life is this stuff. I mean,
Because it's become part of your identity.
because I just love being happy, like it's awesome. It is. I'd say it's kind of becoming my identity. Yeah, certainly more than I used to identify as a career guy, all that stuff.
Do you identify as a fat kid anymore?
No.
Do you know the 4 steps to habit change, effective habit change?
I don't.
Changing your thoughts, changing your beliefs, changing your behavior, changing your identity.
Yeah.
So along that continuum, as you continue to invest in that version of you, it becomes part of your identity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that matches a lot of what I've experienced. I'll say this though, like, I look at all of this as just the journey never ends. It's like you talk about what is your identity. Well, that kind of changes over time. My identity, the way I've identified has changed so much since I've been an adult, and like even more. Some might say I've been in a 10-year midlife crisis, maybe. I don't know. Like even still, that's cool. But I still am trying to kind of figure those things out. But I'm unabashed about attacking life in a way that helps me do that, because I'm just very interested in that, like
pursuit of happiness.
What does it mean for me personally to be my authentic self, And so I've just learned so much. Again, like I got so much gratitude for everybody around me, and life is pretty fun right now. Not to say it's all rainbows and unicorns. It's not.
Never is.
It never is. But I can find the good in most things now, when I used to not be able to do that at all.
Yeah.
I'd just be like, oh, I guess I'm just an unhappy person, and kind of maybe that's cool and mysterious. No, it's not. It's if you're not happy with that, then it's not cool, or whatever. It's just like
it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. We were talking about it on the way to the gym this morning, just like this, how powerful it is to find like peace and contentment, and be able to just get your head to shut off and be able to just sit and relax and not have to like scream at yourself to shut up, telling yourself that you should be doing something else. And so, and it's interesting. You mentioned it, and it is something that I resonate with as well. This idea of getting to an inflection point and going, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. And Tom Segura, in one of his specials, was talking about, most recently, he lost quite a bit of weight as well. And he was like, yeah, people are sliding into my DMs all the time asking me if I'll help them, like coach them to lose weight. And he was like, no, absolutely not. He was like, why? Do you hate yourself? And he was like, no, of course not. And he goes, that's the problem. Until you get to a point where you go, I fucking hate this. Yeah. I'm not going to change. Yeah. And when we had that conversation all those years ago, I remember, and we were talking about this morning too, like a week or two ahead of that, I got on the scale and I saw a number that terrified me. Like I was 50 pounds heavier than when I had my daughter. Yeah. When I was almost 30. And I saw it, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I like broke down. I was like, I can't, how did I get here? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like, I don't want this. Yeah. And I had to come to that spot of like the breaking point and go, something has to change. I don't care what it is, but something. Mm-hmm. And then him saying, would you consider? And I was like, yes, I would.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
And I mean, again, you have such a support system there, and that matters. Like, if you, like my life has gotten considerably better the more I've let others in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Vulnerability.
So, yeah.
Oof, that's a hard one for men these days. Whew.
It is, but it's becoming so much easier for me because I surround myself with people that are about that,
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, for people that are very anti that, guys and stuff, like, that's not the kind of personalities that mesh well with me at this point in my life, Yeah. I'm all about that kind of energy, like I have a lot of hippie type, sort of mentalities because it's based on love, like, and I'm okay with that. And like, I still feel like a masculine person, and that's fine. Even if I didn't, that's fine too.
I might have to beat on you a little bit, but it's because I love you. And I need to help you.
Yeah, it's okay to share that with somebody. It's not weird. It's like, you make me happy, man. Thanks for being my friend,
Yeah. Well, and the love part is so important because we think of it as an external force.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've noticed the most is the pointing it back at ourselves, right?
Yes.
And being able to give the love to ourselves, to have the same level of grace and patience and all of that you would have for your best friend if they were struggling.
So true.
And it's interesting that you were talking about the self-absorbed nature of fitness and how it can be viewed as, and obviously anything on a slippery slope. Like if you take marathon running too far, you're going to damage yourself. But there's a happy medium. But we as a society want people to be other absorbed, right? And so corporations, relationships, TV, all of this stuff, social media, it's all based on, I need you to be outwardly focused, externally focused in order for you to find what I'm selling valuable. Yeah. And when you are able to turn it internally and go, okay, I know what's right for me and I don't give a flying fuck what anybody else has to say, then we don't care about vulnerability because we say what's on our mind because it's important, and we're able to love ourselves because we're not hearing other people screaming at us going, you're fucking it up all the time.
Well said. Yeah. Like it's a over, maybe I don't know, like maybe not overused isn't the right. It's you hear it a lot, but how can you love others if you can't love yourself?
100%.
And for me, it's like a symbiotic relationship with the people in my life that, I've had people come up and just say, wow, you just give off like a very good energy. And I'm like, well, you give it back in spades. So it is kind of a selfish act in a way, because I'm like giving out a certain energy intentionally because I know I'm going to get it back tenfold. Yeah. And that's it's a good return on that investment in energy to me. Like it's so worthwhile,
it's how really wealthy people describe money.
Yeah.
Well,
it's the relationship.
It's the power of compounding interest and sort of energy.
And love.
Yeah.
That's
love. Absolutely.
Fitness too.
Yeah.
Because fitness works very similar to money.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you can, and I think that's a lot of why once you start, and I don't think it necessarily matters which direction you start, if you start with mental health, physical health, career health, whatever. But once you get to a point where you have agency over something that you didn't have agency over before, it kicks into all of these other places where you're like, well, if I can do that, then why can't I do this? If I can do that, why can't I do this?
It does have a powerful reach to it. Like, I mean, I at age 45, I'm doing activities and physical feats that I would have never thought possible. Like not even. Well, like wake surfing. Honestly, one of my favorite activities I've done all year was the 2 hours I spent with you guys on Lake Sammamish. It was like Sarah taught me to wake surf. It was awesome. And I'm just like, this is just going to keep being the theme, is like the people around me sometimes believe in me more than I believe in myself. So it's like if they think I can do it, I might just just trick myself into thinking I can do it too. And sure enough, I can do a lot of things that I never thought I really could, or, oh, you're not built to run a, distance, or, you're not, you're too old to try kind of keeping up with the professional basketball players you train with. I'm doing all of those things. I may think that sometimes, but somebody around me is telling me, go get it, man. Like, you can do this. I'm like, all right, well, I'll try. And then I try, and I don't want to let somebody else down. I've lived my life like not wanting to let others down, which in some ways can be unhealthy, but in some ways it can be very healthy.
Very positive.
Right? Like, and so just picking those right people and being there. And, I know that I do that for other people too. So it's like this symbiotic relationship, and it's a beautiful thing. Just like it's the most beautiful thing, actually, so.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious though, you went from 310 to what are you at these days?
Ooh, that's personal.
There are going to be some pictures in this one that are probably going to be pretty personal.
Trust me, I've been in those pictures.
Gosh, I'm right around like 220 right now.
220.
So I think when I first started my like fitness measurements, like it was like I was 311, 32% body fat. I think probably right now, it's been about 6 weeks or so since I tested, but I think I'm probably walking around at about 11%, 11.5% body fat, 220. I mean,
you're fucking built.
I almost cut mine in half too.
It's an amazing feeling, right? Like it's, and it's just it's not a life I've ever lived before. I've never lived a life where I'm like, you're actually not one of the unhealthy looking people. You're actually one of the healthy looking people, you know, and
How about healthy feeling?
No, that was more importantly, healthy feeling people. But I found a very strong positive correlation between if you feel good and you're fit, you probably look pretty good too. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, like it all works together, you know. So.
It's really, it's a very symbiotic thing.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious to know, like, two different sides of the coin for two different questions, and I'll let you noodle on this as you answer. But I'd love to know from your perspective, what has been your most favorite and least favorite part of this transformation, and what has been what you would consider to be the easiest and the hardest part of this transformation?
Great question. My favorite part has just been the friendships I've made, you know, in the gym. You know, straight away. Like I keep coming back to Ryan, Coach Ryan. Like,
Jim is the shit. It's so good.
You know, these are people that, you know, like I train with, have become really good friends with.
Yeah, they're like family.
Men, women, you know, old, young, you know, literal professional athletes, you know, people that are not professional athletes, normal people like me, people with families, all this stuff, like a cornucopia of people that I really would have never probably come into contact with. But yet through the power of community and just we're all there, you know, we're you know, it's funny to think about, you know, my social hour Monday through Friday tends to be at 6 to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm at the bar.
When everybody's like, I'm asleep then. Are you insane?
It's like we have our crew and we all are there for one another and super, super passionate about one another and each other's success. But everyone's pretty serious about their fitness, and that's a pretty motivating thing, you know. So again, like I'm saying, you know, have people with far busier lives. I have very little variables that I have to control. Like I don't have children. Like I don't, you know, I have like some seriously impressive people that have families that have way more obligations to be, but there they are, 6 a.m. busting their butts, kicking ass, taking names, all that stuff. So like my favorite part of the last 8.5 years has just been the friendships I've made and the people I've, you know, gotten to be close with. And we do other stuff outside of the gym. We go on, you know, we go climb mountains together. We go fishing, or we do just other stuff. Like it's real, genuine, deep relationships. So that's my favorite part. The least favorite part, you know, sometimes is, you know, you just, you know, you're never, at least I'm never immune from it, sort of judging myself from time to time about like, you know, you just failed. I mean, Chris has gotten a few kind of semi sort of negative texts, not even semi negative text. Dude, I just polished off donuts, cookies. I'm having a stressful work week, all this stuff. And I'm like, just dumping on him kind of, but he's just like, yo, chill, you know, step back 2 levels. So I get sort of tired of myself sometimes, you know, like, and so that's the least favorite part. But, what was the third one? Sorry.
Easiest and hardest.
I feel like there was
there was the
positive
favorite
and negative.
That was the favorite and least favorite.
So the easiest part is just the motivation to go train. Yeah.
That's the hardest part for most people.
Yeah, it is. You know, like I have a lot of people that just they hate the concept of training.
Physical activity. Yeah.
I mean, my wife is very much the opposite of me. She's super, you know, introspective, very like I would say non-physically active with what she likes to knit. She likes to garden, all these things. I'm the total opposite. I want to just go kick my own ass, whatever. So it takes all types, you know, but, so that's the easiest part for me. The hardest part I would say is just like being patient sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I'm 8.5 years on the journey and I don't even feel like I'm even gotten started yet in some ways, you know? So
I watch so many people, you know, hey, I'm going to start a diet, you know, this and that. And like a month later, they're like, you know, I lost 4 pounds and I gave up.
So that one of the ways in which you have been tremendously helpful is taking the whole concept of a diet and sort of like throwing it out the window. When we first started like chatting about, hey, how do we take this to the next level? Cause maybe this is a little bit of a segue is like, you know, I had been on sort of a plateau for a couple of years, you know, like I would say even, you know, I've been in good shape for a long, you know, years now, but I had sort of been sitting at this like level where, you know, I wasn't feeling I was getting like that much stronger. My physique wasn't really getting better by my own sort of judgment, et cetera. But then we had some conversations and like one of the things that, you know, always is like true is, your nutrition is most of the battle. It's no secret. But I've always struggled with overcomplicating.
Yes.
Because I'm a numbers guy. I'm a CFO, for crying out loud. That's what I do. But I'm like intimidated by having to like figure out my fucking macros and like all this shit. And I'm like, and even counting calories can be kind of intimidating, in some ways.
Oh, it's just
because like, how do you judge? Like, I go on 15-mile hikes. Am I supposed to like eat 2,000 calories that day? No, it's like, so, long and the short of it is you really help reframe my perspective and say, look, dude, we're going to hit this with the highest impact first. Like, just want you to think about protein.
Yep.
And the rest of the stuff will fall into place. You have an obligation to yourself to, prioritize protein and try to hit 200 grams a day. I'm like, dude, that's going to be so hard. I'm going to have to eat only like chicken breast and cottage cheese and all this stuff. But if you're semi-intentional about it, and I can handle a little bit of like challenge, but for whatever reason, like not having to think about the fats and the carbs piece was what for me personally was like, okay, that clicks. Yes, I got the free, we're not sponsored by MyFitnessPal, but I got the free MyFitnessPal like app, and I just started tracking my protein. I was like, you know what? I'm putting so much non-protein crap in my body, even though I think it's healthy. It's not doing anything for me. There's nothing anabolic happening with me. So I'm getting nothing out of my training, really. I mean, that's not true. I'm getting mental clarity, help, all that stuff. But as far as my goals around physique and just athleticism, nothing was happening. In other words, Ryan was leading this horse to water with all of the training, but I was definitely not holding up my side of the equation with nutrition, other things like that. So anyway, when you help me think through that and say like, give me a week of that and see where you're at, I just quickly noticed I was putting so much more carbohydrates into my body than I needed.
Yep.
And not enough protein. Like I was eating protein of like 120-pound woman, like seriously low. And it took some work, but now I have it like where my life is so boring. Like in some ways, it's like I have it dialed in. I know what my day looks like. I
know what I'm eating, when I'm eating it.
I know where to dial it up and dial it back based on my activity levels. So, credit to you in sort of helping me think through that and helping me actually implement it and holding me accountable in some ways to like, and also just not getting dejected when I'd be like, yeah, I screwed that one up. You're like, back on the horse.
There are no failures.
There is a big picture at play. It's not just like this moment in time.
Yeah, today doesn't matter.
So that's been huge.
Well, and another thing that's really interesting that they tell you in parenting, and I wish they mentioned this just in kind of real life, looking
real life versus parenting.
Well, right. But it's targeted. So you don't only get it when you're a parent, but, this idea of looking at, food, sleep, calories, energy, all of those different things in terms of a week.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when your baby's little and they have a bad feed or two, you freak out and you're like, oh my God, my baby's going to die. Yeah. And they're like, no, look at it from a week's perspective. Like if you've got, so like you talk about, I go out and I climb mountains. Do I eat only 1,200 calories? Absolutely not. And like our rule has been for the longest time, like you bust your ass in the gym. It's not a free for all. Like I'm not going to go hang donuts from my ears and whatnot, but like you eat what you need to eat. So we'll go out for a mountain bike ride or a hike or whatever, and we'll come back and we'll eat a burger and onion rings and a beer and say, I earned this.
You want to live life too. Like I will never be IFBB pro or anything like that, because I'm not willing to sacrifice the things that are like communal and enjoyable. But it's like an 80-20 rule, like to me, like, I like that analogy a lot, what you just said. And I think that, it's again, so much of it comes down to just the knowledge is out there for you, but it's a matter of how you consume it and who you consume it from. Like, so I've just in the last several years, I've been such an advocate of having coaching in my life in one way, shape, or form, whether it's career coaching, fitness coaching, nutrition, wellness, whatever, like yoga. Like I do all of that stuff, and I have other people that are way more qualified and way more experienced than me helping me rather than try to do it all on my own.
Fumble my way through it.
And it's like, the monetary investments I make in that stuff are the best investments I've ever made in my life. And also just the energy investments I put in are also, similarly, high ROI. So yeah, I think, the analogy is very much like you can't F up 9 months of progress because you went off the rails and had 3 donuts and a couple cookies. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
Not even
Similarly,
But it
you
feels like it.
You feel like that. Your psychology is somehow built to be way more negative than reinforcing positive. Because I never really have the opposite thing where it's like, oh, I had a great day of clean eating. I'm going to be 9% body fat tomorrow. No, it just doesn't happen.
You don't ruminate on the best case scenario, but we should.
We should at least give equal share to both. But
exactly.
You look at the worst.
We're just not
What's
there.
the best?
But yeah, you can't sort of build your goal physique or your goal athleticism in a short amount of time. You also can't just crush it at a certain point. You've talked a lot about it, Chris, and I'm always in build mode, or I should say sort of cut mode, whatever you want to put it. But I've never been at the point of maintenance.
It's a weird spot to be.
But it actually is easier to maintain, well, obviously, than it is to get to a point in time, a point on that journey,
I think that's the one thing that gets misrepresented so often.
Yeah.
You hear the people say I don't want to eat broccoli and chicken for the rest of my life. I don't want to miss out on these communal events,
Right.
Being able to go to a restaurant with people.
Have a glass of wine.
Yeah, exactly.
I have intentionally, so we both have been, probably about 4 years now that we've stayed at pretty peak level shape for the first times in our life.
Yeah. That's a long time.
It really
be in that place.
Right.
And it's nobody told me, and it just pisses me off. Once you get there, hear me again.
As long as you're reasonable.
Once you get there, it's fucking easy to stay shredded.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Or big. It's
very reasonable.
I can go out to a restaurant, in a shitty restaurant. I ate McDonald's 2 nights ago. I brought home everything from Mickey D's because our kid got home from Germany. She's like, I just want a Big Mac. I'm like, we're doing it.
Done.
We're doing this.
Yeah. I had a quarter pounder with cheese. It was so
Yeah. It makes, honestly though, and when you do those on those kinds of cake, it makes you appreciate it
a quarter.
more.
Yes.
I got to the point with this is total side trip. When I wasn't being mindful of what I was eating, I didn't even appreciate the shit that's supposed to taste really good and be bad for you. I would eat half a pizza and just not enjoy it.
Right.
I'm
you wouldn't even notice.
You
I was
just thought you were
I was
fueling your
eating it like
body.
an addict, basically.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I truly
Addictive.
was So what you're saying is these foods are literally engineered to hit pleasure centers. So you might as well enjoy it if you're going to do it.
If you're going to do it, go
And
for
I
it.
found that, if I need to scratch those issues sometimes, I was not long ago, I'm telling my wife, we need to get some donuts because I haven't had a donut in 7 months and I'm going nuts.
Do it. Do it.
I have to do it, it just, you just have to do it. Otherwise you're going to obsess about it.
Yeah.
So
you're a sweet and gooey guy.
I'm more of
I'm a salty, crunchy.
savory, like a pizza.
Pizza's
Typical
the best
the
thing.
guy.
Pizza is my desert island food.
And cheeseburgers, those are, I'm very kind of down the middle with that type of stuff. I do love donuts though. I think it runs in my family. My younger brother is incredibly fit. He has a donut addiction.
Oh, wow.
But he's like you. He's been fit literally, and he's probably one of my biggest motivations. He's been fit for 20 years, shredded fit. But he's I eat donuts.
Well, that's the thing. Once you understand,
it is what it is. But he knows his body.
Yes.
And he doesn't deviate from his overall consistent. Again, you're talking decades here.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can have donuts a couple times a week, and it's not going to
and if you
away
plan it
from
into your
20 years of practice.
If you plan it into your macros appropriately, once you understand the
Fair enough,
levers and how to move them, you can literally, I made a joke years and years ago. My first failed attempt at getting in shape. I had a girlfriend tell me, she's like, I'm having problems being attracted to you because you're so big. I had gotten to my heaviest at that point.
Oh, I got that too.
Big Jack?
No, I was 270
No.
pounds of hanging over my belt,
gosh.
the biggest I ever was.
Yeah.
So I went and bought this book, Jim, what's his face? Is it Fit for Life? I think is what it's called.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Jim something, but I read it. I applied what they said. And for a little while it was working great. I was losing weight. Everything was going great. But it was the first time that I started to recognize that if I treated it like money or any other investment, where if I understood like, hey, if I rack this up, this comes down, and I can start to work those levers.
Yeah.
So years later, after many failed diet attempts, and I did start to finally get a feel for what worked, I made a joke that I was going to make a parody of that book. And I think it was going to call it Bud Light for Life.
Yeah.
And my goal was I had to drink an 18 pack of Bud Light every day, 7 days a week.
God.
And I was going to get people lean doing that. My father finally dissuaded me from the fact, and he's like, you're going to create an entire generation of alcoholics and just fuck everything up.
You might lose some weight, but
Listen
you
here,
might
Pied
increase
Piper.
the size of your liver, but
you might get sued.
I mean, you absolutely can lever in your macros to basically eat whatever you want. I have gotten to the point personally though, where, and I feel good about being at this point where it's like, yeah, I will definitely indulge, but like I know going into it, and it's the same with drinking now. I don't drink as much as I used to by even a long shot, but it's like I know going into it, I'm not going to feel good after this. Like, and I'm accepting that.
Yep.
Like I'm going to have a food hangover, or I'm going to have a literal hangover if I have like 3 or 4 beers or something like that. And it's just like, but I still make the choice sometimes because I'm like, well, I just want to say fuck it, I guess.
And enjoy it.
Yeah. And it's just like, all right, but I know what the consequences are going to be. And I'm glad I do, and because then it helps me make choices for like that 80% of the time, So
it's very different than coming home from work, stressed out, not enough time, order a pizza, drink a couple beers, and doing that 7 nights a week for 10 years. And
a little bottle of wine.
What happened?
Absolutely.
And not even remembering what you ate.
Yeah. Just
Right.
not memorable.
Didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually just feeling bad about yourself. Oh, you're just you
piece
this
of
is this
shit,
is basically
blah, blah,
what
blah.
your life is going to be. It's like
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like it took, like I said, it took me like some stuff going on in my life to hit that bottom, or in my world what bottom was, and I'm glad I did, because like it actually did
Changed some stuff.
It set things in motion.
Well, let's, how many people do you know now? Because you've made this change. Like, and when I met you, ran into each other again 9 months ago?
Yeah. Well, December last year.
December of last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that all?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, we went like,
wow.
Do you have a before picture of like when you and I started working together? God, I hope you do.
I mean, not really, because I used to be very careful because I didn't like the way I looked.
Yeah.
And
So
I was
you
very
would
much
stay away from the camera?
Yeah, very much so. Like, and I wouldn't like, I wouldn't really let people take pictures of me really. Yeah. But even like, going back to even when I first started training at Fire Fitness, like I certainly wasn't in great shape or anything like that. So, I mean, we could conjure up some somewhere, I'm sure.
I'd love to. I mean, I know
I've found a few recently that have been like,
well, yeah, there's some times it was hard to look at. I mean, for me personally, I was like really low self-esteem.
It's embarrassing as fuck.
Like,
but now it's a great before picture.
Yeah. Well, even the self-conscious part of me today is like, I mean, I'm not even like close to being in amazing shape. I mean, I'm good for me, but as far as objectively, there's a long way to go. And that's the motivation. Journey never ends, all that stuff. But
what percentage of the United States, or the planet for that matter, has a six-pack on their body?
I don't know.
It's real low.
Okay.
Real low.
So I'd love to hear, because if I'm hearing you correctly, you might have something similar to what he has, which...
I'm as curious as you, by the way.
Right. So imagine being on an airplane. You're on your way to your vacation.
Yeah.
Right.
Kauai, Hawaii. That's where we're going.
In order to get there, you have to arrive. And if you're always striving, you're always on the plane, you're always going to the next thing.
Yep.
You never give yourself a chance to appreciate the effort that you've put in and the gains that you've had. So I'm curious how you feel about arriving. Is it difficult for you in that way? Like recognizing how far you've come and seeing the pictures and going, holy crap.
It's gotten a lot easier.
Good.
I will say that. Yeah. It used to be, I would never, sort of lean into giving myself credit. And part of that was also like, like I would only assume it was happening if somebody told me it was happening, as opposed to like
recognizing
inwardly realizing that myself. And now I'd say it's gotten easier because look, I have a lot of people around me that, you know, are encouraging. They say, hey, great work. You know, like you've done some serious work here, all that stuff. And the reason why we've gotten to that point again is because I've allowed myself to open up to others, and then they open up to me. So it's like, now I've created that. It's great. It's awesome. So, it's easier now, but it's still, I still, like a lot of people, you know, judge myself against others, you know, like let's just leave it at that. That's true. But I'm cognizant of that. But yeah, no, it's objectively speaking, I've come a long way, but I'm excited about like the next, you know, 10 years. Cause I think legitimately I can continue to get more and more healthy, in shape, happy, you know, well into my 50s for sure. You know,
I think way beyond.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the goal, hopefully, is to be, you know, 1% better than you were yesterday, and not necessarily, you know, judging yourself against other people. But it is. I say that, and I'm also the person that anytime I run a foot race, I pick somebody out of the crowd and I'm like, I'm going over the finish line before you. But I don't tell them. I don't tell them so they can compete with me. Yeah. I'm just going to beat them silently.
I love that. You know, I think that's one thing too, is I'm competitive with myself, but I'm not actually that competitive with other people.
Oh, I am.
And I think I admire that with people, because there's just another level of fire and motivation that comes with that, you know. I'm just for whatever reason I'm not, you know, like, and maybe that's just because I never want to lose. Like, I'm afraid of losing. So if I never actually say, hey, I'm in a competition with you and I'm not as good as you, then I guess I don't have to face losing, if I'm being honest with myself.
On the same note though,
but you never lose.
Right. But it's like not much of a victory either, you know?
I mean, if you lost and by virtue of losing that thing, you ended up with $10 million.
Yeah. I'd sign up for that.
Exactly. But it came from a loss.
I know.
So how do you not beat yourself up about that $10 million if you lost for it?
I could think of 10 million reasons why I wouldn't.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah. I'm going to ponder that one for a while, I think. Okay. Yeah.
So when you got to the point where you, because you and I are very similar, I have always been a comfort eater. Yeah. I have spent a lot of my life what most people would call a very healthy alcoholic, I think, based on what I drank.
I don't know if they'd say healthy.
Yeah, fair enough. I always liked the gym. Movement was never a problem for me. And I know that is for a lot of folks, but getting my nutrition, I remember the first time we were at a gym, it was the other gym that I would say had the same energy, buddy of ours,
TFW.
Jeremy Sackett's gym.
Okay.
I came in and I saw this guy, I don't know, 2015 probably. Mm-hmm. First time I saw him, like, he's my age, he's our age, he's 45, 46 maybe. He's fit as fuck. Dude has a six pack all the time. His muscles are full and bulging. Like, he's got confidence, like everything about him. I was like, good God, like how fucking awesome would it be like that guy? And he sat down and hand fed it to me. He's like, hey, you do great stuff in the gym. Just keep doing that. Just keep coming here. He's like, but let's start talking about your nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I fought it and I fought it and I fought it and I tried a little. But once I finally, later on, he had left that gym, but we did finally apply the nutrition and the movement, and all of a sudden, magic started to happen for both of us. And I'm curious for you, once you got very intentional with your eating 6 months, a year ago, how rapid did you feel that transformation was? Because we saw you about every 2 weeks or so.
You could see it every time.
You were physically noticeably leaner
every time
we saw you. And still today,
wild.
Like, your jawline is unbelievable compared to what it used to be.
Well, you know what? I'll say this, like, everything happened on almost the exact timeline that you predicted it would. It was like, you were
weird.
Like, yeah.
It's like we did the math.
Well, it was like, 6 months of, intention. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll also say, I think it's worth bringing up, like, men as well as women need to make sure their hormones are in check.
Oh yeah. So we're going to come to that for sure.
So like, part of the reason I think I had plateaued was because I had the testosterone of like a 70-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so I needed to get that dealt with too. And I have. So, I'm on TRT.
Yep.
So for those that don't know what that is, that means that you're getting exogenous testosterone to replace what your body's not producing on its own.
Because
Correct.
of whatever reasons, like
For whatever
traumatic
that,
brain
so like
injury
it kind
or-
of comes down to two things. It's
heredity.
either your brain isn't producing or your testicles aren't. And so in my case, it's the brain's not producing it. So,
That's the pituitary, right?
yeah, yeah. So
And shitty diet can do that.
well, so that's it. All works together. So like I started dealing with that. I started on TRT back in January, and that has been, I would say, working in the background to all of the other things. So training, nutrition, I do yoga, stress,
Yeah.
meditation, sleep.
Yep.
What else? Like I said, I think that psychedelic compounds help me a lot mentally. So like you look at, I like to think about you're stacking all of those things, and then on this like side version, you have the hormonal aspect that's fueling all of that stuff.
Yep.
So, I got sort of dialed in on my hormones to then now where all of the other things that I'm doing are having maximal effect, I think.
You tuned it.
Yeah.
Big time.
Because you got
Big
your
time.
amp all the way up to 11.
Shocker, everybody! I'm not natty, but I'm also not.
either.
I'm also not an Olympic athlete or anything like that.
Right.
So I'm just saying, like people that think that that's cheating or something, fine. But it's to me, I just feel like I'm working with a full deck now. You
Yeah.
know?
You were working at a disadvantage before.
And the funny thing is, when testosterone levels get down into that like sub 300 range,
It's unhealthy.
you're actually
well, so,
like,
yeah, you called it like, so there's I think I was sitting at like 370 on a scale of 300 to 900 or something like that.
depending on who, 9 to 12.
Anyway, but so now I'm sitting at like 700 or something like that.
Yep.
So, I mean, look, I wanted to be on the high side of normal, let's just be real. I definitely wanted to get maximal effect on my athleticism physique. So
Didn't you say somebody came to you recently and said 140 they were?
that is tragic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you hear a sub 200. This is somebody that's
Yeah.
going to be, we're going to be talking with soon.
Yeah, that's very, very low.
Well, and it's interesting to me because
And they said he was fine. He's on the low side of fine, but
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing. I will say this about like general practitioners, like they are telling you the truth when they say you're in the normal range. Well,
Yeah.
like I'm at the very bottom of the normal range. I don't want to be at the bottom of the normal. I want to be like
towards
at
the top.
the higher end.
Well,
but
on
within
top-
a health, I was very clear though. Like I'm not willing to sacrifice side effects for whatever gains that comes from. So like I've been fortunate to just dial it in to where I'm all of the side effects that people talk about is I've never seen any one of them.
No.
Well, and
My mental clarity is better. I'm growing more hair on the top of my head. I mean, like all the
Everything's
things
better.
So, and I don't know. Yeah, but anybody that says like this stuff doesn't help you, that's a lie.
changed. Well, here's the
I'm
interesting-
stronger than I've ever been. Like, let's be honest about that.
Here's the interesting thing.
That's kind of
too.
not normal with like a 45-year-old guy.
Oh God, no.
and I'm going to be 50 next year.
Are you serious?
I am.
Oh, holy crap.
Yep.
Congratulations. You look way younger than 50.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but
No, I love it.
it's just an objective truth.
The fact that I say it so openly means I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
I
No,
love
that's-
my age.
That's incredible.
My concern, and let's move.
But
into
I
this-
think that's one thing that's taboo for whatever reason, like that.
Yes.
I don't think it needs to be, because if somebody in my family's, going through menopause, let's just say, and they need to take things to dial in their hormones, I'm not thinking that's
you're cheating.
cheating or like
You should be
Right.
sweating
you
and
should be
crazy
totally
and
natural. It's like, but I think I get it when you're talking about leveling the playing field with competitive sports, I
yeah.
guess. Kind
Absolutely.
of. Although there's something about it where I'm like, dude, do all of the steroids, I guess.
I have questions. Okay. So,
but
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
like it's I just putting it out there, like it's
question
it's
is,
worth
are
doing
you-
yourself a favor to like make sure you're dialed in, and a lot of people are. Like a lot of people probably my age are totally normal, which is fine. It's great.
almost everybody I've worked with, let me tell you this, every man I've worked with that I've actually sent in to get blood work,
only
one
one.
person has come back at even the bottom end
Yeah.
of the normal range. Like hearing
What is happening to testosterone levels in men? Like,
the normal range.
Crazy.
Oh, dude, it's like
There's so many theories.
high stress, masturbation, chronic masturbation, there's all the
Access to
microplastics
Yep.
in the, like there's
I'm not
all
watching enough porn.
No. Absolutely. That is 100%.
Yes, that was the
accurate.
message.
Yes.
Rory, you should be absolutely.
You nailed it.
It's like how I picked that out of all of them. What the hell's wrong with me? Nothing. Everything.
Well, no, it's So one, you had said you're not natty. And
Correct.
But is anybody?
here's the question
Really?
though. Wait a minute.
No, not anymore.
You can-
What is
you
natty
can
for what?
compete.
Like,
You can compete in professional sports
oh yeah, you can
with a TRT.
powerlifting, all that stuff.
Well, no, like even the MMA, they can be on TRT. They just define like, hey, if you're over
can't go
this,
so
you
hot.
can't be.
Well, yeah.
Because here's the deal. I'm going to be honest.
makes sense.
I've been on TRT forever. I spent 10 of those years drinking like an asshole, eating like an asshole, and continued to be like, I was strong, but I had a lot of excess on me. I wasn't really happy with it. But when I dialed in that nutrition, everything got real good. And I'll be honest, dude,
yeah.
like
Real good.
you're on what people would call TRT. I've in the last 3 or 4 years been on what I would call aggressive sport TRT. I've definitely dabbled in some side substances as well.
Aggressive sport.
Well, here's the deal. I usually I like to be at 1200 or a little hotter. Like that's where I run 7 days a week and it's fucking great. I feel groovy.
Yeah.
But I keep up with my blood work. I keep up with the doctors. Like everything
you
is
have to.
objectively
Like, I mean,
better.
that's critical. Yeah.
So yeah, I struggle with it being cheating, but I do really like it is critical. I think that people consider that like the first thing I talk to anybody about. If you're over like 30, it's like, go get your hormones checked. Male or female, go get your hormones checked.
And I would say like you still have to do the work, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Getting on
There's
TRT
no
does
magic-
nothing.
yeah.
Well,
And in fact,
There wasn't
like,
a magic bullet.
being on, kind of TRT for me is just made me that more committed to all of these other healthy lifestyle changes, like, and so like, in other words, I don't want it to be detrimental to me because I think if I had like if I just, had higher testosterone, but no other outlet for it to go, like, I think that I know myself enough. That would be a problem mentally, so, but I don't know, like it's definitely so, for the things it's done for me, like I can train more and I recover quicker.
Yep.
I mean, I had some chronic tendonitis that was, I could barely put up 135 pounds on a bench press and that's gone away.
Gone.
But I'm also cognizant of the other stuff too. Sleep, huge. Like I'm in bed by like 9:30 every night. Like I'm super focused on sleep. Yoga, do that every day. It's like, it's magic. But so all these things together, but yes, you're getting maximal effect if you have the right kind of hormonal balance, let's say.
Yep.
I think. At least that's what I'm, different for myself.
I look at it as like
it's
an
different for
investment
everybody,
portfolio.
of course, but yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you don't put everything into one basket. You get some really heavy hitter, big lever
Diversified,
movers.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh,
And you can add some leverage to it by putting, getting your hormones dialed, so
Yep.
I'm glad I have, I'm, like I said, I don't think it's a coincidence that I'm as happy as I've ever been.
you're the first client I've worked with that has executed on my intended protocol exactly
Flawless.
as requested. You did it better than I did it when we started playing with it. And your results, dude, over the last 6 months, what percentage of body fat have you dropped in the last 6 months? So about half of that you were on TRT? Or let's see.
Well, no,
You said you started January.
started January.
Yep.
And so I first got measured again in January. I think I was at 21% body fat.
So you've dropped 10% body fat in a matter of 6 months between
9
intention.
months.
Carry the one, sure.
Yeah.
But
Less than a year.
so you cut your body fat almost in half by getting your hormones fixed, being intentional about your eating, and then a few other little habits that you stacked.
Yep.
And what's interesting to me,
Well, and I mean, I'm almost the same weight. So I put on probably 15 to 20% of pounds of muscle.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, when you're hearing this, he lost half his body weight, but his scale really didn't change.
stayed the
So
same.
don't get overly focused on the scale.
The
And that's
number.
things you've told me as well. It's like, I'm like, what the hell? I gained a pound, dude. What's up? You're like,
Relax.
yeah.
Breathe.
Yeah.
It's amazing how people will, again, they ignore everything for 10 or 15 years. And they're like a month in, they're like, nothing's happening. I'm like,
Right.
you're just starting to do something.
Yeah.
Well,
but
and-
it took a while. Like, I think, I saw some initial gains, but then it was really like at that sort of 6 month mark of all those habits that you really started to see big time. And then it's like, then you can continue to refine. So I learned something. I did a really long hike like a month ago, like 100 miles, and your body's burning so much energy, 6,000, some odd calories a day. And I was eating probably 3,500, 4,000. So I came back 10 pounds lighter, but didn't lose any muscle or anything like that. I'm like, okay, my body doesn't need as much food as I'm even putting in it.
Yeah.
So it's like when I've started to realize that now, I'm just even more mindful, even if it's, healthy stuff. I'm just not consuming as much food as I used to, because I'd get done with these long runs or these massive training sessions. I'd just like wolf down a lot of food, and it might be like a pound of ground beef or something like that. That's not crazy unhealthy, but I'm just like, I don't need all of those calories. I kind of sort of developed this sort of analogy in my mind about the body being like a furnace. Like there's always a pilot light on, that's kind of just keeping a level of heat going and burning energy. That's just always going to be there. And then you can put a whole bunch of kindling in there and put some logs on top of that, and that's going to be your additional fuel. But if you suffocate that pilot light with all that extra crap, then you're actually doing detriment to yourself. Whereas sometimes you can get away with putting a lot more fuel into your body and then doing massive training to like, kind of burn through it.
Yep. To use it.
Yeah.
But then you get into this cycle where you're just like doing massive,
going to
like
the gym
boom,
to
boom,
outrun
boom.
your diet.
Right. And then it's like, but if you just kind of keep, like we all sit around a campfire sometimes and it's like, okay, it's burned down. Somebody put another log on there and they put another log on there. It kind of burns gradually through that log. And then the next person puts another log on it. Like that's the way to do it. It's just like kind of keep just being consistent. Even if you put out more energy and you burn through more, doesn't mean you need to load a whole, 6 logs on it. You can just keep burning one log at a time and you're fine. Like that's what that's how I think about it in my head now.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Once you understand what your body actually needs.
Well, and ironically, one of the major components of your analogy is oxygen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Without oxygen, you can't stoke that flame. You can't fuel that furnace.
Exactly.
So it's important to notice or to pay attention to your stress level. And I was going to mention this earlier, because the system that drives our digestion, our rest and digest, or our feel and heal system, is our parasympathetic system. And the system that puts us into fight or flight is our sympathetic nervous system. That is a binary switch. So even if you are under a very small amount of stress, your system thinks that you are in the same position as being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Like legitimately. So the way that it works is all of the blood, not all of the blood, but the majority of the blood that is in your internal organs ready to process and digest and take care of everything goes to your brain and your extremities to make sure that you are able to run.
Yep.
And until you've come back to a place where you are out of that sympathetic nervous system, you are not able to do those things. So the amount of stress and chronic stress and like low-lying underlevel chronic stress is so high for people that it's no wonder they aren't able to get things to move, because they're constantly at a deficit.
Yeah.
And what you don't realize is until you get rid of that extra weight, that deficit, whatever it is that's holding you back, whether it's stress or overeating or, all of that, once you get rid of that, your momentum goes off like a shot, because you're like a rubber band coming off of somebody's finger, right? Because now you're not weighed down by all of that stuff. And that's why you eat less now, because you weigh less now. You have a smaller gas tank than you had before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, and I think it's just taking that knowledge and just sort of applying it consistently, right? As opposed to like, oh, okay, I just... Yeah. So that all makes total sense. And I think every day I learn a little bit more through just experimenting, and it's like, okay, I know I can, I don't need as much. And so sure enough, like when I got back from this hike, it was like down 10 pounds and it was like still getting stronger, still getting leaner. I'm like, all right, let's keep applying these principles, and see where you can go. I don't really have like a destination per se of what I'm trying to do. I just want to, like, my main motivation is, continue to be athletic for as long as I can, because the things I like to do require that. you know, A, just training every day, but then B, like, you know, going on long distance hikes, climbing mountains, like mountain biking, fishing, all these things that I like to be outside and do cool stuff.
Wake surfing.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard to do it when you're 300 pounds and
it doesn't feel good, you know, like it's way more comfortable when you're mobile, agile, athletic, you know, and you can kind of build on that.
And what's been amazing, you know, we both did it. Now we've watched you do it. We've helped some others to do it.
Yeah.
Like I said, pretty well, but not quite as brilliantly as you. I never understood, like for the longest time, you know, deep into my 30s, like, again, this is just who I am. Like I'm a husky dude. Like I carry extra weight, this and that. I didn't think this was possible for me.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden I'm fucking desperate to share it with everybody because we figured out the math. Like you said, it's almost like you knew the time window and it's like, you can actually just sit and do the math and it's accessible to everyone. Mm-hmm.
Truly.
Everyone can have it.
I'm not unique. I'm not special or any of those things. Like
I disagree to some extent.
Yes.
But
my point is, you know,
there's
anybody
nothing that you did that was extraordinary.
Yeah. And it just, anyone that has a little bit of desire, you got to have that first. Yep. Right? Like you have to have desire. Because no matter which way you cut it, anytime you make a change in your life, it's going to be hard. Change is always hard for anything, you know? So you have to be desirous of these things, and you also have to have some intention. You have to have like the wherewithal to actually think about what you're doing and then put it into play. Like I have, you know, a pretty, like I said earlier, pretty controlled lifestyle. Like I don't have any children, you know, and I've made this the top priority in my life. I literally, you know, have turned down career moves in the very recent past that would be taking me away from my lifestyle. And I wasn't willing to do that at any cost, like any dollar amount. Like, and I just,
sorry, this is what I'm focused on right now.
It's just like, I want to keep living the life I'm living.
Yep.
And I love it. And I think I don't want to change it. And, you know, there's hard to put a dollar sign on that, you know, for me.
I think that was really what struck me about watching you do this was it was very clear that like you restructured your priorities. Like,
yeah,
my health and fitness is it. Like right now, like everything else can kind of be on the sidelines and wait, but this is all I'm doing until I like get this nailed down.
I mean, look, I'm in a privileged position to be making a decision like that. There's a lot of people out there that don't have that luxury. They, you know, like have a family that it really takes up all of their time, you know, and maybe they, you know, career-wise are forced to work a certain way, you know? So like, I recognize I'm in a, you know, privileged position, but with that privilege, I'm making a good decision, I think, you know, and sort of like, you know, for me and for those around me. And, you know, like I've had a lot of people say, hey, look, you know, and this is kind of like one of the things that's like, you know, where it's selfish, but also kind of like rewarding in the sense that I've had people come out of the woodwork that I hadn't talked to in years. Like, and maybe like I became friends with them on social media like 10 years ago. And they're like, man, I've just been creeping and watching your stuff. And I just wanted to say that, you know, you've got me motivated to just do something. And it's like, if there's, you know, just one person that feels that way. Cause like I said, you know, John Barnes, he was that guy for me, you know, and so, you know, that kind of fuels me to even try harder for myself, because if other people are getting something from it, then it's just this infectious thing in a good way.
Yeah.
You know? There's a lot of people out there, and I've had a lot of people say, you know, there's, you know, you may not know this, but there's a lot of people that are just, you know, really interested in what it is that you've been doing. And they just like can't wrap their mind around. You're like, how old
how
are
did
you?
that happen?
Like, you know, like, I'm like, you know, it's, so it just, you know, I don't know. Like I like the validation. Let's just, there's no question about it. Like,
who doesn't?
You know, like, but I think I channel that into positive things, you know, like, you know.
Well, and why wouldn't, like, it's no different than, you know, you buy a brand new car and the neighbors come over and like, ooh, it's shiny and it's new and it's pretty, like,
right. But
for the first time in, I think, all three of our lives, you know, you can be in a swimming suit and not be embarrassed. And like, for me, like taking my shirt off, most of my life was fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
so
lucky you
embarrassed.
keep clothes on me these days.
I don't know if I'd call it lucky, really, but
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I love seeing people like, just like people have said they like to see me do things. Like I love to see other people do
Crushing.
things to improve their own well-being. Because at the end of the day, like that's what I care about the most is people's well-being, and including my own is like mentally. It really comes down mostly to that. you
Mental.
know? But
Yeah.
again, I found that the physical and the mental go together, like for sure. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if
and people
I,
that are like afraid to make that first step, I'm like, just don't be afraid. You know, there's nothing to be afraid of.
you can
Yeah.
go back to shitty eating tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or just like, you know, even when you don't think you're making progress, you're really making progress. If you just go to the gym once a week when you never did before, that's progress. If you turn down, you know,
one donut a week.
one donut a week because you're
progress.
intending to do that and you succeed at that, that's a win, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Like, I just love like people doing things that progress their well-being. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. you know?
Yep.
Well, and I love having fun at the gym. Like that's one
So
of
fun.
my favorite
That's
things.
the funnest thing ever, man.
Right? To just walk in
I love it.
and, you know, the number of times that, we've been in the middle of workout, just be like,
Yeah, it's just such a fun atmosphere. And it's just like, you know, everyone's kind of getting their ass kicked a little bit. And yeah, it's just fun. You know, who doesn't like be part of like a really cool community of people that are, you know, very different, but also like-minded. It's just the most amazing thing ever.
Super motivated,
Yeah.
super supportive.
Yeah. Attractive inside and out. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like there's definitely a lot of really impressive people, specifically at Fire Fitness and Conditioning.
It's-
all over the,
Oh my
all over the
gosh.
country. But
right?
Ridiculous, dude.
Every time I go in there,
Fire
I'm like,
Fitness is just full of really impressive people.
Did you say Fire Fitness all over the country?
I'm just saying other gyms.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, I was like, I thought he was local only.
Well, he should figure out a way to bring that magic
Let's talk,
beyond.
Ryan.
right?
Yeah, no, Ryan's truly got something special. So if the more people that can be exposed to, in my opinion, the better for him and for
We haven't nailed him down definitively, but he's going to be here. He's going to be on this podcast,
Yeah,
and
he should.
we're going to talk
He's
about
gonna be far more interesting than me,
dude.
for sure.
Oh,
That's
pish.
nonsense.
Pish posh.
Blah.
So, is there anything as part of this experience that surprised you getting to where you are now that like you might not have expected?
Yeah, just how much I'd embrace it as like, you know, like fun. You know, like I actually have a lot of fun in all of it. You know, I have fun talking about it. I have fun, you know, doing the things that fuel it. I mean, I love going to yoga. I love like it's fun. And I was surprised by that because I used to be a guy that's
Yeah, it was a chore.
took a lot to, you know, get stoked about something. And used to be that dark guy. It was like, you know, I'm anti this or anti that because I think that's cool. But now I'm just all about embracing all of it. And I just think that's the way to live, you know?
Well, so I think it's important to recognize, and we've been talking a lot about this lately, that you were in survival mode for a really long time. And when you are able to move from survival mode and have the space to move into thriving, that's when you're able to have the opportunity to look at your life and do an assessment. So if you're legitimately in survival mode for whatever reason, health, you know, family, whatever, this is a really tough place to get to because you need to have the space to sit back and not feel like you're dying, like not feel like you're struggling to survive every moment of every day. And so
true.
like that's huge. And we expect so much from ourselves knowing that we are fighting for our lives and we're beating ourselves up going, why can't I do better? When you know, like if I saw somebody drowning in the river and I was like, hey, kick your shoes off, it'll be easier. I'd be like, fuck you, come get me. I'm dying. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Paddle harder.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you just can't. Yeah.
So
So,
true.
good
That's
job getting
very
yourself-
deep. Yeah. It's it's
Yeah.
It's been so much fun to watch. Dude.
Oh, it's been so
Holy
awesome.
shit, to just watch you light.
I'm not going to lie.
We're just getting started. I
He
mean,
shares some of the pictures and stuff, and I'm like, Damn, that's impressive. Impressive.
Yeah, I do. I send little selfies to Chris sometimes.
Which, by the way, it's funny. Sarah's like, she's like, if somebody got a hold of your phone and saw how many pictures of men you have
Right?
with their shirts off, I'm like, it's a great way to like have a gauge of where they're at.
Did you say, what was the first syllable of that?
Gauge.
Are you sure?
I do crack up a little bit how much, in all of this, it's like, man, I'm doing so much aesthetically to look good to other guys. Like,
Exactly. Because you know what? No woman cares about how much you can bench press.
By the way,
not
true.
a single one.
That's legitimately true.
Actually, that's not true. Gym rats would.
The weirdest thing I ever recognized, like when I got into like really good shape, dude, women paid less attention to me. Like they would recognize me, which felt great and was fun. But like the energy of like, we're going to go do naughty stuff. Like,
I don't know. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair because we've talked quite a bit in previous episodes about what you had been up to.
I used to have some different energy that I put out in the world.
Exactly. I think that's more about what you were looking for.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation because that like the relationship aspect and the physical aspect and the like how those work together changes.
Yeah.
It very much changes. If you're one of the hardest situations you can be in is trying to get yourself in shape when your partner is not on board with you. Right.
Yeah.
Because it immediately creates a fracture. Like it creates a line where they are not interested in coming with you. Yeah. And it's fine, but you have to figure out
though. Like my wife is definitely not on a fitness journey by any stretch, but
you two have figured it out.
We have. We absolutely have in the sense that she's super supportive. But credit to my wife. When I was 310 pounds, she never once had a negative comment to say for me. Mm-hmm. None of that. When I'm now where I'm at, she's also similarly like, I wouldn't say she's not impressed, but it's not like she's all of a sudden, oh my God, and I wouldn't expect that, but it's because we support one another in doing the things that each other wants to do. And she knows that this is really important to me. And she might wonder why, like, do you want to look good for other guys?
Yes,
it's all for me.
But I mean,
the pictures
she also
get.
is like, she's like, I don't understand why you want to go do 100-mile hikes, but I totally support it, that kind of stuff. But you hit on something, I think, like, as far as like, you're talking about, other people and their reactions to you. I've absolutely seen more interaction from people, men and women, with me personally, but I attribute it, maybe that's partially like some of the progress that I've made, whatever, aesthetically, but also I think my energy is just so more better. Like I've had more positive people come to me and say, your energy is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're such a positive person. Like, you never used to be like that. I'm like, I know I didn't, but I just am now.
I feel good now.
And I think that's what draws people in. I mean, that's what draws me to other people. And it also, if they're good looking, I'm like, that's also another bonus.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's really the energy people put out. And I've definitely had people, much more engaged with me. And I like that because I put myself out there more than I used to because I feel better about myself. It's like, it's all this vicious, it's
an upward spiral,
beautiful cycle,
spiraling
not vicious, but like this virtuous cycle.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was funny. Literally last week, I walked into a coworker's office. They're like, "Oh, you look really good today," and I was like, "Really? Thanks. I think I did everything pretty much the same way as I always did." And they were like, "No, it's your energy.
It's just what you bring.
It's literally just like you look totally normal. It's And I was like, "Oh, thanks."
And that's the highest compliment I think you can get. Honestly, like it's like you're just a good presence right now.
I like having you around.
Like I like that you're here in this moment. Like, and that's like, how does it get better than that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like truly.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think we're sort of streamlining what we see ourselves doing. And the thing that I put at the top of the page is being a force multiplier for dreams.
I love that.
Right.
There's such a massive impact that you can have. There's so many people out there that really don't even know how to get from like not just point A to point B, like just one step away from point A. Mm-hmm. That if they have the right support and sort of like advocacy and just like accountability too, you got to hold people to the fire a little bit sometimes. Mm-hmm. That's what people need. you know, but they also want it, right? Like, you know, so
Get all the ingredients together.
Well,
yeah, if you could match up with all the people out there that want to take that sort of step just in well-being, I think that all of the tool sets are there, but they have to want it, you know?
yeah. Well, and a coach's job in a perfect world is holding space for your dreams when you don't have space for your dreams yet.
Yeah.
Right. So if I can envision, and that's one of the things that's been so amazing about taking on this new coaching journey with folks is the powerful visions I have of what they want.
Yeah.
And when they describe it to me, like I can see it so clearly. And I have gotten really, I'm trying to get better about making sure we dial that in. Say like, and I've said it like this before, like, I want to make sure that you and I are on the same page, because if you're putting your vision out there and I'm putting my vision out there, I know I'm powerful as fuck. I don't know what you got going on.
I know that too.
But if we put it together and we send that out into the universe and try and manifest it, we want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So
We both want A.
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
I really want to thank you, man, for having faith in me and letting me. Wow, like, dude, it's been really fucking fun to watch. Like,
It's been really fun to watch from my
You
perspective
guys are
too.
tremendous. It means the world to me that you care like about me, you know, so thank you. Yeah.
absolutely. Love the fuck out of you, man.
Love
Yeah.
you guys. Thank you.
Alrighty, guys. Well, right about an hour and a half.
Right?
Thank you so much again, Rory, for being with us. And be well, everyone.
Yeah.
Stay elevated, folks.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't come back in your episode of fat to fat again.
Rory in at 380 pounds.
It's called the hula hoop.
Not happening. Let's go.
Exactly.
No, but seriously, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks for
You guys
being
are
here.
awesome.